In the third year of our marriage, the day Sophia came home late, reeking of men's perfume, I knew it was time for a divorce. In my past life, her comatose first love, David, woke up on this day. His memory was stuck in the year when they loved each other the most. Just after waking up, David couldn't take care of himself. During that time, I would accompany him in the hospital. At 12 o'clock at night, Sophia dragged herself back, exhausted. She, who used to be a clean freak, was now covered in the pungent smell of disinfectant. She changed her shoes, then lay wearily beside me, and said in an assertive tone, "My head hurts. Give me a massage." Sophia closed her eyes, habitually rested her head on my lap, and naturally took my hand and placed it on her temple, just like she had done many times before. When she came home from work in the past, I would always thoughtfully help her relieve the fatigue of the day. When I massaged her well, Sophia would praise me, "Your skills are no worse than those of the masters outside." Every time at this moment, I would feel a great sense of accomplishment. She didn't know that I had learned this especially for her. But this time, I didn't move. Sophia slightly frowned. I pretended not to notice, picked up the divorce agreement I had prepared long ago, and said softly, "Sophia, let's get a divorce." She, who had just been resting with her eyes closed, suddenly opened her eyes, sat up, and looked at me in shock and anger. "James, are you crazy?" "I'm not crazy. I just don't love you anymore. The James who loved you died in that car accident in the past life. Now, let's start the story. If you like it, remember to subscribe." When did I start liking Sophia? It was so long ago that I can't even remember. We were childhood sweethearts and had a betrothal since we were kids. Before David appeared, Sophia and I had a great relationship. She would wait for me after school on her own initiative, and then we would walk home together. When I couldn't figure out a math problem, she would say helplessly but affectionately, "You're such a little fool. If our future child's IQ is like yours, it'll be over." At this time, I would pretend to be angry and ignore her. Then Sophia would buy my favorite milk tea to coax me. The milk tea was really delicious and addictive, just like my love for Sophia. Once it started, there was no turning back, until I even sacrificed my life for it. I don't know if it was fate, but the day I first met David at Sophia's house happened to be my birthday. So later, when Sophia and David got together and David proposed to celebrate their acquaintance anniversary, Sophia never showed up on my birthday again. After having dinner at my house, Sophia said mysteriously that she had a gift for me. I followed her home and saw David in the living room. David was the child of a good friend of Sophia's father. After his parents died, he lived with his grandmother. Not long ago, his only relative passed away, and Sophia's father, feeling sorry for him, brought him home. At that time, I didn't know that this thin and fragile boy would gradually penetrate Sophia's life and take her away from me. David was the same age as us and transferred to our class. From then on, the two of us who were inseparable became three. David talked very little. Most of the time, he just listened quietly. But whenever it came to Sophia, he would chime in, like, "Sophia, you got the first place in the class again in this exam. Sophia, you play tennis so well. Sophia, your problem-solving idea is clearer than the teacher's." As a boy myself, I could tell David's little thoughts. I was also uneasy at times. But Sophia seemed to dislike him very much. She privately complained to me more than once, "He's so affected, like a little green tea. Still, our James is better. He's so stupid and cute." I still remember that the sunset glow was particularly beautiful that day. On the spacious playground, our two shadows overlapped. In my ears was Sophia's soft whisper, "James, let's be together after we graduate from high school." At that moment, my heart beat extremely fast, and my face turned so red that I couldn't lift it when I nodded. After confessing our feelings, Sophia deliberately distanced herself from David. But they lived under the same roof, which was an unchangeable fact. I noticed something was wrong when Sophia would talk about David when we were alone. "David is really stupid. He even hurt his hand while cooking. How could someone like bitter gourd? He's really hard to figure out. He cried during dinner last night, saying he missed his parents." Her tone changed from dislike at first, to pity, and then to a faint smile at the corner of her mouth when she mentioned him. I felt very uncomfortable and even strictly prohibited the mention of David's name in my presence. Sophia smiled and scratched the tip of my nose, saying, "Okay, I'll listen to you, my little jealous one." After that, we lived in peace for a while. But loving someone can't be hidden. We would mention that person inadvertently. Just like I would mention Sophia 9 times out of 10 sentences in front of my friends, and just like Sophia would blurt out David's name in front of me again and again, and even the way she addressed him became affectionate unconsciously. But most of the time, she would just call me by my name, James. The outbreak came on the night of our high school graduation. I was originally going to confess my love to Sophia that day. But David called, saying he didn't feel well. Sophia left me without hesitation and headed towards David's house. In the heavy rain, my voice trembled as I shouted at her, "Sophia, do you like David?" Sophia didn't answer, but her unwavering steps said it all. A few days later, they announced their relationship on WeChat. Later, I went to a university in another city to heal my heart. Before leaving, I blocked Sophia and David. It was not until an accidental conversation that my mom mentioned David. That boy became a vegetable after falling. Whether he can wake up in the second half of his life depends on fate. At that time, it was just the senior year graduation internship. I majored in finance, and my parents asked me to come back and help in our family company. I saw Sophia again a month later. She came to my dad's company to discuss a project. Wearing a red dress, she was so glamorous that people dared not look directly at her. I was stunned for a moment, then nodded distantly as a greeting. But Sophia blocked my way. "When are you going to unblock me from the blacklist?" There were many people in the elevator, and they all looked at us. Sophia seemed determined to get what she wanted, so I could only bite the bullet and take out my phone. Sophia knew I was doing finance. After that day, she would ask me some financial questions every now and then. She also took the initiative to mention David to me. We had already broken up before he fell into a coma. I pretended not to see or hear, but I have to admit that my heart rate increased at that moment. Sophia chased me for about half a year, aggressively. Eventually, we got together. The following things seemed to go smoothly. Before getting married, I gave Sophia a chance. "Are you sure you want to marry me?" I didn't say it explicitly, but I thought she should understand. Sophia didn't hesitate at all and lowered her head to kiss my lips. After getting married, Sophia hoped I would focus on the family, so I quit my job and tried my best to be a qualified husband, taking care of her 3 meals a day in daily life. Sophia had a poor stomach, so I learned to make nutritious meals. Sophia had trouble sleeping, so I learned massage. I gave wholeheartedly and also received Sophia's feedback. She would prepare surprises for me on my birthday and take me on a trip abroad on our wedding anniversary. Countless times, when I woke up from a dream in the middle of the night and saw my lover lying beside me, I felt very happy. I was so happy that I even forgot that there was still David between us. In the 3rd year of our marriage, David woke up. He lost his memory and his memory was stuck in the year when he loved Sophia the most. He only recognized Sophia. If he didn't see her for a moment, he would start crying and threatening to commit suicide. Sophia began to go to the hospital frequently. I wasn't without doubts about the authenticity of the situation. I even went to the hospital to visit him with Sophia. But when David saw me, he seemed to be greatly stimulated, screaming and throwing things. Sophia explained that he couldn't accept the fact that we were married and asked me not to appear in front of David again, so as not to aggravate his condition. I said, "Wrong, Yuri, my wife. This is a fact. What if David's amnesia never gets better? Are we going to hide it for a lifetime?" Sophia's expression froze, and she said hesitantly, "Let's wait a little longer." That day, I didn't feel well and went to the hospital for a check-up. When I walked out of the doctor's office and was about to call Sophia, I looked up and saw David standing outside. He stared at me with hatred in his eyes and said, "James, you're an affair. Give me back my Sophia." He rushed towards me out of control. During the struggle, I hit the wall and scraped my elbow. "David, you and Sophia have broken up." I couldn't help but tell the truth. David's eyes turned scarlet, and he shouted at me, "No, I said that out of anger." The moment the words came out, David suddenly realized something was wrong, but it was too late. My heart sank suddenly, and I asked in confusion, "You're not amnesiac?" After a moment of panic, David calmly admitted, "James, don't be too complacent. I snatched Sophia from you once, and I can do it again. Just wait and see." My brain was strongly shocked. When Sophia's call came in, I told her everything. She just paused on the other end, not only didn't believe what I said, but also blamed me for being petty. It was also from that day that the temperature of our relationship dropped rapidly. I no longer turned a blind eye to Sophia going to the hospital. I tried to stop her, crying and begging her not to go. However, Sophia was indifferent to my crying. She even brought David back home later, with the ridiculous reason that it would help his condition recover. I always thought Sophia didn't know the truth and was innocent, until I heard her conversation with David in the study. "Sophia, if I was an amnesiac, would you still take care of me?" "Of course." She answered firmly, but I felt like I was falling into an ice cellar. That night, we had a big fight. Even at this time, Sophia was still deceiving herself, saying, "David is my younger brother." I was so angry that I was shaking all over. I couldn't stay in this house for a moment. When I walked out of the house, it was David who came after me first. He was like a victor, showing off in front of me. James, you can't fight me. I completely lost my mind and slapped him. Sophia, who came late, just saw this scene. Her partiality was so blatant. She pushed me away without asking any questions and hugged David in her arms with distress. I lost my balance and staggered back onto the road. Just then, a runaway large truck came head on. I couldn't dodge in time and fell in a pool of blood. Everything happened so suddenly. Before my consciousness dissipated, I saw Sophia rushing towards me like crazy. She shouted my name hoarsely, and her face was full of fear. I thought it was ridiculous. Shouldn't she be happy? After all, I, the only one who obstructed them, was dead. She could finally be with David again openly. My memories of the past life were interrupted by Sophia's words. She said to me angrily, just because I accompanied David in the hospital for a day, James, when did you become so unreasonable? I won't agree to a divorce. Sophia's words were full of complaints that I was not sensible. Right, after all, nothing had happened yet. Today was just the first day after David woke up. Facing her questioning, I was very calm. Before I could speak, Sophia's phone rang. She answered it in front of me. We were very close, and David's trembling voice clearly reached my ears. Sophia, it's thundering outside. I'm scared. Can you come and accompany me? Sophia's face instantly softened. She softly comforted him, don't be afraid. I'll come right away. Then she turned around and was about to leave. Before leaving, she didn't forget to scold me, I'm going out. You calm down by yourself. Actually, David was right. I was just Sophia's second best choice. Sophia left in a hurry and even forgot to change her shoes. When the door opened, a cold wind blew in. I wrapped my clothes tightly and got up and went back to my room. Soon, I left home with my luggage that I had packed long ago. This time, I decided to let Sophia go and also let myself go. It was enough for me to die for Sophia once. In this life, I want to live for myself. I stayed in a hotel for one night and went back to my parents' house the next morning. When my parents saw me coming back with a suitcase, they were first shocked, then they looked at each other with a solemn expression. What happened? Did Sophia bully you? Facing their anxious questions, I didn't say anything. I just hugged my mom aggrievedly. Seeing this, my dad immediately got angry. How dare she bully my son? This woman has gone too far. He was about to call Sophia, but fortunately, I was quick-witted and stopped him. I sniffed my sour nose and said with a particularly serious look, I'm going to divorce Sophia. Don't ask anything, and don't try to persuade me. I just want to have a good rest. I returned to my familiar room and lay on the soft big bed. Only then did my hanging heart completely relax. I slept very soundly this time. Until the evening, my mom knocked on the door and came in, saying, James, Sophia is here. Get dressed and come out. Sophia had called me several times while I was sleeping. I looked at the time, and the earliest one was an hour ago. In the living room, the atmosphere was strangely awkward. Sophia was still wearing the same coat as yesterday. She was sitting opposite my parents, and no one was speaking. Until I appeared, 3 pairs of eyes looked at me in unison. Sophia reached out to pull me, saying, James, why didn't you tell me when you came back to your parents' house? You made me worried. Worried. If I remembered correctly, it had been almost 20 hours since I left home. I quietly avoided her hand and sat next to my parents. I looked at her indifferently and said, What do you want? Sophia's hand froze in mid-air, and the smile on her face almost couldn't be maintained. She retracted her hand awkwardly and quickly adjusted her expression, coaxing me softly, Okay, stop being angry. Let's talk about it when we get home. It seemed that she didn't take my words seriously yesterday. So, I emphasized it again, Sophia, I'm serious about the divorce. And I've already submitted the divorce registration online. After the 30-day cooling-off period, we'll go get the divorce certificate. Seeing my tough tone with no room for relaxation, Sophia finally became serious. My mom gently tugged at my sleeve and interjected, James, talk nicely. Don't mention divorce at every turn. What exactly happened? My dad, who had been sitting aside without saying a word, also spoke. He looked at Sophia with an unfriendly expression. In my past life, when I was with Sophia, my dad was the first to oppose it. He was afraid that I would be hurt again. Unexpectedly, his words came true. In the end, it was the woman I had loved since I was a child who cost me my life. Thinking of this, an unknown fire burned in my chest that I clenched my fists. When I looked at Sophia again, I couldn't calm down. Facing my dad's questioning, Sophia tried to gloss it over. David woke up. I went to the hospital to see him twice, and James was a little unhappy. It was indeed twice, 12 hours each time. Before I could get angry, my dad stood up first, scolding Sophia for being greedy and not knowing how to cherish. In the end, we all parted unhappily. Sophia left in a mess, almost driven out by my dad. My dad was angry, but as parents, no one wants their children to divorce unless it's absolutely necessary. Besides, Sophia hadn't committed any major principal issues so far. My mom mentioned it a few times intentionally or unintentionally. James, you've liked Sophia since you were a child. It's not easy for the two of you to get together. In the 3 years of marriage, you've been living happily, right? Are you really willing to give up and let her be with David? I was speechless for a moment, and my heart felt sore and swollen. In my past life, I was reluctant to give up, so after countless quarrels, I still held on tightly to that nominal marriage. But what was the result? I pulled the corner of my mouth bitterly. If Sophia hadn't provoked me at the beginning and hadn't let me taste the taste of happiness, would I have had a different ending when everything happened? However, there are no ifs in real life. I put down my chopsticks, put away that bit of sad emotion, opened my phone, and found some photos, saying, "You guys look at this first." I handed the phone to them. After Sophia left last time, I had someone keep an eye on David all the time. Mainly, I wasn't sure if Sophia would obediently go through the divorce procedures with me after 30 days. Unexpectedly, the detective agency had an unexpected discovery. One night, when I went downstairs in the community to walk the dog, I ran into Sophia, who came to find me. What bad luck! I turned around to leave, but my wrist was grabbed, so I had to stop. I looked at her indifferently. Sophia's face was etched with fatigue, and there were dark circles under her eyes. It seemed that David had really given her a hard time these past few days. I tried to pull my hand away forcefully, but couldn't. Sophia rubbed her temples in annoyance and said, "James, that's enough. My patience is wearing thin. Go upstairs and tell your parents. Then come back with me later. I haven't had breakfast for days since you left, and there's no one to take my dirty clothes to be washed." Her words were filled with blame, as if I was being unreasonable. It seemed that I had been too good to Sophia in the past, which made her so presumptuous. I stared at her intently and said, "Sophia, when you chased me and married me, was it because you knew me well and thought I was suitable to be a husband, with a gentle and easy-to-control personality?" Sophia's pupils constricted. Presumably, I had hit the nail on the head. She said angrily, "James, are you possessed? Why have you become so heartless? David has lost his memory. He only recognizes me. Can't you put yourself in my shoes? You weren't like this before." I laughed and said, "What was I like before? A obedient and sensible nanny who centered everything around you and loved you wholeheartedly." For a moment, I even wondered if Sophia had ever really loved me. The answer I got was no. Sophia had always treated me like a nanny. The so-called kindness she showed me was just a reward for my good service. I didn't want to say another word to her. It was disgusting. I struggled hard and shouted, "Let go of me." Perhaps out of a sudden conscience, Sophia's attitude wasn't as tough as before. Her tone softened a bit as she said, "If you don't like it, I'll try to see David less in the future." "Do you really have to divorce me?" I replied without hesitation, "Yes. If you don't agree, it doesn't matter. I'll sue for divorce." I didn't want to entangle with her any longer. I directly bit her hand. Sophia yelped in pain and finally let go. I regained my freedom, took a step back, and distanced myself from her. Looking at this hypocritical woman, I said angrily, "Sophia, amnesia isn't an excuse. The fact that you two were kissing in the hospital is really disgusting. And, is he really amnesiac?" Sophia narrowed her eyes and asked, "What do you mean?" Some things are better left unsaid. I believed Sophia would look into it. Unexpectedly, Sophia acted even faster than I thought. She called me from an unknown number. As soon as I answered and heard her voice, I wanted to hang up. But then she said, "Wooey misses you. Come back and see it." Wooey was a kitten I picked up. When I was reborn, it was sick and hospitalized in a pet hospital. During this time, I was so busy with the divorce that I actually forgot about it. I never thought Sophia would use the cat to threaten me just to force me to meet. I spat into the phone, how despicable. Sophia had never liked cats. I wasn't sure if she would go to extremes and harm Wooey. So, I rushed home in a state of anxiety. When I got to the door, I found a person squatting in front of Sophia's house. Presumably hearing the footsteps, the man curled up on the ground suddenly looked up. The surprise on his face instantly turned into hatred when he saw me. It was David, one of the people who had killed me in my past life. I took a deep breath, then another, and managed to suppress the urge to tear him apart. In this life, I just wanted to live well and have no more entanglements with these despicable people. I shook my keys and said coldly, "Get out of the way." David looked at me angrily and said, "James, did you say something to Sophia? Why isn't she coming to see me or answering my calls?" He was wearing a hospital gown, his hair was a mess, and he was waving his arms around like a clown. Hearing this, I was slightly startled, but remained calm on the surface. I sneered and said, "Ask her yourself." This sentence seemed to hit David's sore spot. His face contorted, and he roared, "You've already mentioned divorce. What are you doing here? James, get out of here. Never show up in front of Sophia again. You're a thief who stole my life. Now that I'm awake, Sophia can only be mine." I was unrelenting and said bluntly, "Thief. I won't take this baseless accusation. Sophia spoils you, but I won't. First, I didn't cause your coma. Second, it was Sophia who chased me and married me. Third, we're not divorced yet. You're the one being the third party, making such a ruckus." The expression on David's face gradually cracked. Finally, I said, "Wish you success. And keep an eye on her. Don't let her bother me again. You two are meant for each other in this life. Don't go around hurting others." These were my sincere words, but David thought I was provoking him. He lunged at me with a ferocious face. Before his hand could touch the corner of my clothes, Sophia, who opened the door from the inside, pushed him away. She was quite strong, and David stumbled back several steps before he could steady himself. Sophia protected me behind her like a treasure and angrily scolded David, "Who told you to touch him?" I was hiding behind Sophia, my mind in chaos. I couldn't help but wonder, is Sophia out of her mind? In my past life, ever since David woke up, whenever she had to choose between us, she would always stand firmly by David's side. But today, she was actually protecting me. I was really confused and extremely shocked. David was equally shocked. He looked at Sophia, biting his lips in grievance, and tears streaming down his face. "We loved each other so much. How could you hurt me for another man?" David cried out. Sophia glanced back at me and said, "He's not another man. He's my husband." David was in tears, his voice shrill and desolate. "Then what am I? Why are you treating me like this? Why did I wake up? Everything has changed. Everyone is moving forward, but I'm the only one left behind." David was crying uncontrollably. I was too lazy to watch their show. I turned around and went inside. I thought Sophia would be moved when she saw her former lover in such a miserable state. However, her reaction once again exceeded my expectations. She was almost indifferent. "Stop pretending. You're not really amnesiac. David, let the past go. Don't hold on to it anymore. Go back to the hospital first. I've informed your parents. They'll be back from abroad in a few days." I stopped in my tracks and couldn't help clicking my tongue twice. In my past life, I tried my best to stop them, but they only got worse. This time, after being reborn, I decided to let them go. I never thought Sophia would wake up to the truth on her own. I shook my head inside, thinking, trashy women really are insufferable. Just as I finished packing Wu Yi's things and picked up the carrier, suddenly, a hand reached out and pressed mine. Sophia said to me in an unusually gentle voice, "Can you not leave?" I replied without hesitation, "Sophia, there's no chance for us." Her fingers around my hand gradually tightened, and I could tell she was suppressing her emotions. Sophia looked at me in disbelief and asked, "Why? What happened in the hospital last time was just an accident. If you don't like David, I promise I won't see him. I can also make up for what happened before." I thought to myself, it was a human life, Sophia. What can you use to repay that? I didn't say anything, just lowered my eyes and resisted her. Sophia had always had limited patience with me. Seeing that I was unyielding, she immediately lost her temper. She snatched the carrier from my hands and shook it violently. Wooey was so scared that it meowed loudly inside. She shouted at me angrily, "James, what on earth do you want from me?" Sophia had never liked cats and never paid attention to their emotions. Seeing Wooey arching its back and cowering in the corner of the carrier in fear, I was furious. I looked up at her suddenly and said word by word, "I want you to stay away from me, Sophia. I never want to see you again in my life." Perhaps she had never seen me get so angry or seen me look at her with such hatred. The color drained from Sophia's face instantly. Her body swayed, and her grip on the carrier loosened. The carrier dropped to the ground with a clang, making a harsh sound as it hit the marble floor. Wooey was terribly frightened. I didn't care about anything else. I pushed Sophia away and hugged the carrier tightly. Before leaving, I glanced at her one last time and said, "Sophia, don't make me hate you." Sophia finally came to her senses, standing there at a loss. She opened her mouth, as if she wanted to say something, but I didn't want to hear her voice anymore. I walked away without looking back. After that, Sophia was quiet for a while, and I went back to work at my dad's company. One day, as usual, when I entered the company hall, I saw Sophia waiting there with a large bouquet of roses. I pretended not to see her and walked straight ahead. Sophia chased after me and said eagerly, "James, happy birthday." It was working hours, and there were people coming and going in the hall. The large and eye-catching bouquet of roses in Sophia's hands attracted many colleagues to stop and watch. I had no choice but to stop and look back. Sophia probably thought her affection could move me. A relaxed smile appeared on her face. She walked up to me, handed me the flowers with both hands, and said, "I arranged them myself. They're your favorite champagne roses." I lowered my eyes and stared at the not so neatly arranged roses for a while. Then, in her expectant eyes, I reached out and took them. Sophia beamed with joy and couldn't wait to say, "I've also reserved a table at your favorite seafood restaurant for tonight. I'll pick you up after work." Just then, the security guard arrived late and started to disperse the onlookers. He stood between me and Sophia, waving his hand to shoo people away, and said, "Miss Sophia, Mr. James has given an order that you're not allowed to appear in our company." My dad had always been protective of me. After seeing the photos of Sophia and David kissing last time, he gave this order to the security guard. At the same time, he also terminated many collaborations with Sophia's company. A year ago, Sophia's father's eye disease relapsed, and he went abroad for treatment. The company's affairs were fully entrusted to Sophia. Her abilities were not as good as her father's, and she had been struggling in the company. It was my dad's support that helped her gain a foothold step by step. This time, the termination of cooperation dealt a huge blow to Sophia. In my past life, she took my love for granted. In this life, I treated her like she was worthless, and now she was trying every means to please me. Sophia didn't move. She just looked at me quietly, waiting for my response. Although the security guard had the order, he didn't dare to act rashly. Everyone's eyes were on me. Under the gaze of everyone, I walked step by step to the trash can at the door with the roses in my arms and let go without hesitation. This was my response. I looked at Sophia and said, in my heart, "You're just like these discarded roses." Across the crowd, I saw Sophia's face turn ashen, and her eyes were filled with hurt. I indifferently withdrew my gaze and gave the security guard a look. Sophia was then escorted out. As she passed by me, she said, "My mom is back from abroad. She wants to see you." At this moment, I tried my best to maintain a calm appearance, but my heart was in turmoil. In my past life, her parents were very kind to me. When Sophia and David were dating, they were the first to oppose it, and it caused a big stir. After college, David met so many outstanding girls that he started to look down on Sophia. He would mention breaking up every time they quarreled. After doing this several times, Sophia got tired and agreed. After playing around outside, David wanted to come back. He even threatened to commit suicide, but ended up accidentally falling from the second floor. It was really terrifyingly extreme. All these things were later told to me by Sophia's mom. I was restless all day. In the end, I still didn't make up my mind to see them. My dad noticed my low spirits and gave me a few days off to go out and relax. On the day I was about to leave for the airport, as soon as I opened the door, I saw Sophia's mom pacing back and forth in the corridor of my house, wringing her hands. Our eyes met, and she showed a brief moment of embarrassment and unease. "James, are you going on a long trip?" she asked me with a forced smile. Once a close family member, now when we met again, there was a sense of distance and caution everywhere. A dense feeling of sourness welled up in my heart. I stepped aside and said, "Mom, why didn't you tell me in advance that you were coming? Come in quickly." "No, I won't go in." She waved her hand, looking ashamed. "I'm too ashamed to face your parents." I wanted to say that this was just a matter between me and Sophia, and had nothing to do with them. She didn't need to feel guilty. But the words got stuck in my throat. After all, marriage involves two families. With me and Sophia in such a mess, how could there be no estrangement between the elders? I still asked patiently, "Mom, is there something you want from me?" She wiped the corner of her eye, as if remembering her purpose. She looked at me softly and said, "James, Mom didn't come today to persuade you to reconcile. When you got married, Mom said that if you're not happy, you can leave at any time. Marriage is for happiness, and so is divorce. Now Sophia doesn't know how to cherish and is getting involved with David. Mom knows you've been wronged and supports you leaving. Regarding the property division, you're the victim and should take the majority. Don't worry about that. Tears welled up in my eyes uncontrollably, and I interrupted her, I don't care about the money. Besides, Sophia's father is abroad for treatment, and he needs money everywhere. She shook her head and said, it's kind of you not to care about money, but if we don't give you what you deserve, we'll have a guilty conscience. My eyes were blurred with tears, and I choked up several times, unable to speak. In my past life, I was afraid of worrying Sophia's parents, so I never mentioned anything about Sophia and David until I died. I never thought that in this life, I still made them worry. Silly child, don't cry. She gave me a hug. Mom just hopes you can be happy in the future. I came back this time to apologize to you face to face. She held my shoulders and continued, okay, I've said everything I wanted to say. Your dad's situation isn't very good, and I have to go back right away. Although you two are separated, I'll always be your mom. If you have the chance, come and visit us abroad. I nodded heavily and said, give my regards to Sophia's dad. I watched Sophia's mom enter the elevator. I stood there for a while longer until my emotions subsided, then I bent down to pick up my luggage. At this moment, out of the corner of my eye, I saw my parents who had appeared behind me at some point. My dad's eyes were red-rimmed, and his face was solemn. My mom was covering her mouth, already in tears. I went to Yunnan. Along the way, I stopped and went, ate and drank, and it seemed that I could really forget some of my troubles for a while. The day before the divorce, I finally returned home. That night, I took Sophia out of the blacklist and sent her a text message, meet me at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau at 9 a.m. tomorrow. After waiting for about an hour, just when I thought Sophia was going to back out, I finally received her reply, okay. I heaved a sigh of relief and had a good sleep. The next day, I arrived at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau on time. Sophia arrived almost at the same time as me. When I saw her, I immediately walked inside, eager to get it over with quickly. After walking a few steps, I realized Sophia wasn't following. My heart skipped a beat. I thought, is she going to cause trouble again? I frowned and looked back, just meeting Sophia's gaze. I hadn't looked closely just now, but in such a short time, Sophia had become much haggard. Usually, she paid great attention to her image, but now there were dark circles under her eyes, and her dress was wrinkled. A trace of struggle flashed in her eyes, and she asked, is there really no chance for us? Yes. Since the moment I was reborn, I had been waiting for this day. The procedures were completed smoothly. Before long, we got the brand new divorce certificates. Walking out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, I smiled from the bottom of my heart. A month later, I received several million in cash transferred from Sophia, along with the transfer agreements of several properties. A year later, Sophia's father passed away, and our whole family went to the funeral. That was the first time I saw Sophia after the divorce. I had heard some things about her situation. Without my dad's business support, she was exhausted by those ruthless directors, and the company's situation was much worse than before. Her work was already unsatisfactory, and to make matters worse, she was pestered by David. David had fallen into a coma before graduating from university. Now that he was awake, he had no working ability, and Sophia had become his last hope. But the more he tried to hold on to her, the more she got tired of him. The most intense time David made a scene, he resorted to his old trick and threatened to commit suicide on the rooftop of Sophia's company. He thought that no matter how heartless Sophia was, she wouldn't have the heart to watch him die. But this time, he lost the bet. Sophia didn't show up from start to finish. Completely disheartened, David lost all his rationality. He told Sophia that he had figured it out, wouldn't pester her anymore, was going to leave, and wanted to see her one last time. Sophia believed him, but this time, she almost lost her life. David walked into Sophia's office, took out a knife he had hidden in his bag beforehand, and laughed maniacally, if I can't have you, I'll destroy you. During the struggle, Sophia's face was injured, leaving a hideous scar, and David was sentenced to 10 years in prison for attempted murder. After paying my respects to Sophia's father, I had a brief chat with Sophia's mother. When I was leaving, as I passed by Sophia, she seemed to want to say something but held back. She wanted to reach out and grab me but didn't dare. In the end, all her thoughts condensed into one sentence, "Are you doing okay?" I didn't look at her or say anything. I just walked past her, and in my heart, I silently replied, "Every day away from you is a sunny day."